I'm recording. So if you look, we're looking at the handout called AP Practice 1. That's what we're looking at now. And that's what I want to look with you. AP Practice 1. So a couple things is at the end of the year, we're going to be training and preparing for the AP World History test in two ways. One is we're preparing and training through content. Like you need to know that there's a religion called Islam. You need to know there was like a prophet called Muhammad. You need to know there's a system in China called Confucianism. And similarly, you need to know not just content, but you need to have some skills as well. And what are the types of skills that we need to be practicing on? What are the skills that we need to be working on? We need to be working on a word called causation. And we'll talk about that word in a bit, this word causation. This word causation, it means that there is going to be a relationship between certain historical events and other things. That there's going to be a cause, there's going to be a concept, there's going to be a process, there's going to be something that led to another thing. So our goal is we're going to be looking at how does Dar al-Islam, how does that cause other things to occur? How does the fact that India and the Middle East and North Africa and Europe are combined together, how is that going to cause other things to occur? So it says on your handout that cultural developments and interactions, that it says that the development of ideas and beliefs and religion illustrates how groups and societies view themselves. And the interactions of societies and their beliefs often have, we're going to write down three things: political, social, and cultural implications. And whenever you have ideas, beliefs, and religions, they're going to have political, social, and cultural implications. That's what we're writing down. Political, social, and cultural implications. So ideas have impacts. A political, social, and cultural implications. So there's going to be something that Dar al-Islam is going to affect. It's going to do something. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how like religion can impact things. Muhammad had a lot of things to say about women. Some things you can say were good, some things you can say were bad. Let's focus on the good. What was something that Muhammad for the first time said women should have the right to do when their father dies? That they didn't have the right to do this before. They could own property. Absolutely correct. That is 100% right, Amy. That before Muhammad, if a daughter died, they wouldn't get any property. They wouldn't get any inheritance. And Muhammad said, hey, that's wrong. He applied his religion, and it had social implications. There's another practice that Muhammad looked at and said, actually, this is wrong. We do this to girls. We have to bring this to a stop. What practice did Muhammad bring to us? Yeah, killing baby girls. There's a word for that. It's called infanticide. Like suicides when you kill yourself, homicides when you kill another human. Infanticide is when you kill an infant, right? And it actually used to be socially acceptable for you to do that to little girls. Muhammad said, you know what, for me, my religious beliefs are that that's not okay. This is another example of how religion can actually interact with societies and have social implications. Muhammad's new religion meant that the society and the culture was changing. Before Muhammad, people went to the Kaaba all the time. Was inside that Kaaba all statues, and Muhammad said, well, that's not actually lines up with what I believe anymore. And so for Muhammad, he brought it into that. He had religious beliefs that impacted and had social and cultural implications. So we're going to write down the second line. It says that our learning objective is that we're going to explain how systems of belief and their practices from 12 to 1450 affected society. How does a world where Islam dominates in so many different ways affect society? So we're going to talk about that today. In fact, we're going to actually look at a document to help us with that. It says below that, historical developments. It says Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and the core beliefs and practices of those religions. It says continue to, you'll write down, shape societies in Africa and Asia. It continued to shape societies in Africa and Asia. And what we're going to talk about today is how does Dar al-Islam, how does the fact that Africa and Asia and part of Europe are connected by Islam, what impact, what implications will that have? So there's a big kid word that we're going to introduce you to today, and it's the word causation. In fact, this next line where it says, what is the reasoning process that we're going to explore today? Where it says reasoning process, I want you to write down the word causation. If you don't know how to spell causation, where can you look? What's that? Well, right below it. So that's a word that you may not use very often, but it's a concept that you're familiar with. For example, it says causation is the ability to identify, the ability to analyze, the ability to evaluate the relationship among many historical events and developments as both, you'll write down, cause and effects. Cause and effects. I think you're just putting cause and effect. I just read that line. Do you see how it says causation is the ability to identify, analyze, evaluate? Are you following with me? So the words you put is cause and effect. Right after it says developments as both, cause and effect. Nothing. Nothing. I apologize for putting a colon there. It should have just been like a heading. Just get rid of the colon. The colon are the two dots. So let me give you an example of how you already know about causation. I'll start off with Samantha. Samantha. There's something called the American Revolution. American Revolution has causes, various causes. There's one cause that probably in 8th grade they made it super simple and they said this is the cause of the American Revolution. Samantha, what is a cause of the American Revolution? Why did we fight for independence from Great Britain? Okay, why? That's true. Why? Why did we want to? That means that's 2 years easy behind you, right? Go ahead, Logan. Yeah. There's an expression that we learned in 8th grade. We say that we wanted no taxation, as Cameron raises a fist in the air. No taxation without representation. You heard that, Samantha? So we felt we're getting taxed, but we felt we weren't getting represented. So that's the cause of that's the Revolutionary War. We felt we were getting taxed, but we weren't getting represented. Amy, there's another war, World War II, where we fight the Nazis on one hand, and we also fight the Japanese. And at first, we were not involved in World War II. At first, we thought, you know what, it's none of our business. That's actually something happened in Europe. We're safe in America. But Amy, something in December of 1942 changed all of that. Something caused us to go from we're safe, we're fine, we'll leave Japan and Nazi Germany alone to we're going to declare war on Japan. Amy, what happened that led us to go to war with Japan? Something horrible in Hawaii. I believe you have it somewhere in your mind, Amy Gibbons. Where? In Hawaii. Yeah, do you know where it was in Hawaii? All these guys, super excited. Okay, I'm gonna let Samantha redeem herself. Pearl Harbor. Okay. Yeah, so we ended that war by dropping 2 atomic bombs. And if you were just if I were to tell you, did you know our government dropped a bomb that vaporized 35,000 men, women, and children, and then did it a second time. Not soldiers. We didn't drop it on soldiers. We dropped it just like in a city where we blew up schools, hospitals, nurseries. You might be like, well, gosh, that seems like messed up. But guess what? There was a cause to that. The war was dragging on, and we thought, unless we do this, we could be fighting for years more. So causation is something that you're familiar with. Yeah, it's pretty terrible. Now it says in the next line, it says that there's a caution though. It says correlation is not always causation. It says correlation is not causation, and I want to explain what that concept means. For example, I have a student, Isabella Baca. She was sick on Friday. I have another student, Allison Couch. She was sick on Friday. Who else was sick on Friday? Famous person. Trump. Their sicknesses correlate. Couch and Baca were sick on Friday. Trump was sick on Friday. Oh my God! Do you think they caused Donald Trump to get sick on Friday? Yeah, no. Probably not. Right? Yeah, the other way around. Like, it's true that their sicknesses align at the same time, but did they cause one another to get sick? No, there's no evidence. You'd have to have evidence to make that claim. Even if on the surface, they're like, oh, I can make all these connections, right? Now, also, Donald Trump's staff, his workers that work with him, they got sick last week too. There was like a Nigerian American doctor who did, yeah. But if Donald Trump's staff comes down with coronavirus, is there also a cause that would make sense that they are linked together? Yeah, but it's not always the case. Correlation is not always causation. It says on your handout, just because two things occur at the same time, correlation does not mean that one caused the other. We'll write down, it does not necessarily mean that one caused the other. I'm going to give you one serious example, three silly examples. Our first serious example has to do with a guy from Baltimore named Freddie Gray. He's a really famous man. In fact, he was an African-American man who died while in police custody. Those police officers, 6 of them, were actually put on trial for what happened, and they were all found not guilty. Now, if you didn't know anything more about this case, and I told you a black man was arrested by police, and the police got off as not guilty, what might you think, what might people say is the reason why those cops got off as not guilty? They're white, and there is maybe racism, right? That's what you would probably argue. So, in fact, it says on the handout that that is the claim. The claim is that this is an example of what's called institutional, or sometimes called systemic, racism. This is the belief that racism is everywhere, it's in everything, and that black people and people of color are treated differently than white people. That's often what people said about this case. For example, just last week, in the debate with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, the moderator, a guy named Chris Wallace, asked Biden, quote, do you believe there's a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country? In other words, are white people, when white people go to judge, does a judge look at a white person and treat them differently than a black person in court? That's the question. And Joe Biden said, yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education, in work, in law enforcement, the way it's enforced. Even at LaPorte High School, according to Joe Biden, the black kids at LaPorte High School are treated differently than the white kids. According to Joe Biden, people of color in this school are treated differently than white people. It's actually all over the system. It's systemic racism, Joe Biden argues. And so the result, it says, there was protests against racism, 350 businesses were damaged, 150 cars were set on fire, 60 other buildings were set on fire, and 27 local drugstores like Walgreens and CVS, they were looted. That's what happened as a result of this Freddie Gray incident. So it is possible this is an example of racism, in which case people are so upset that they're going to act out, right? But there's a couple of historical facts to consider during this time. back in 2015, who was president of the United States? We'll write down the president of the United States was black. That's an important thing to know, that the most powerful man in the country was black at this time. Below that, there's another job, the U.S. Attorney General. Now, that guy has a job that if he ever sees, it turns out it's illegal to discriminate based on race in the United States. It's a crime. And if the Attorney General, this is Obama's top lawyer, if he ever sees an example of racism, it's his job to create a case. And the U.S. Attorney General at this time, we'll write down, was black. The Baltimore mayor, the mayor of Baltimore, where these things happened, at this time, the Baltimore mayor, we'll write down, was black. The city council of Baltimore, that created the laws and led the people of Baltimore, we'll write down the city council was black, or at least a black majority. The Baltimore police chief, at this time in charge of hiring and training and firing bad cops, the Baltimore police chief, we'll write down, was black. The assistant police department chief, guess what their ethnic background was? They were black. On the next line, there's another job called the state attorney general. This is a person whose job is, if these cops killed a person because of racism, because of, hey, this guy's black, let's get him, it's their job to bring them to trial and to look at the evidence. Now, it's important to know that I could kill someone and not be murder. Like, for example, let's say Samantha went to the donut shop across the street from LaPorte, and she runs across the street, and I hit her as she's crossing the street because it's dark and she's running into traffic. I killed Samantha, no question. But did I murder her? I killed Samantha, no question, but is it because I'm racist towards her ethnic background? I mean, you'd have to have what to back up that claim about me? Proof. You'd have to have evidence, right? There's no doubt I killed her, but the question was it murder? There's no doubt I killed her, but was it because of racism? The state attorney general evaluated the situation and actually dropped the charges of all 6 cops, we'll write down, was black. 3 of the 6 cops who were charged with a crime, we'll write down, were black. And finally, the judge who evaluated the case and said these police are not guilty of murder, we'll write down, were black. There's 2 possibilities here. Either people looked into this case and said, it's terrible, but it's not racism, and we're just gonna, it was a terrible thing that happened, but it wasn't because of racism or murder, it was just a terrible thing that happened. Or there was a secret conspiracy where the black judge, black state attorney general, black assistant police chief, black chief, city council, black mayor, Obama's attorney general, and Barack Obama all worked together to cover up for racist cops. Which one do you think is more likely? That this was a terrible thing that happened, but it wasn't because of racism, or there was a conspiracy by all these famous black people to cover up racism? Do you think that's more likely, the conspiracy theory? I would say probably not. Barack Obama's a pretty good guy. I don't think there was a secret conspiracy. This is an instance where just because cops ended up in a situation where a black man died, there's correlation, but there's no evidence that it was because of racism. You're right, I'm just talking about one case. Are there instances of racism? Absolutely there are. I'm just talking about this one case. That's a serious case where correlation does not necessarily equal causation. Let me look at 3 silly cases. Look at this example 2. Read example 2 out loud for me, Cameron Castillo. Read the whole thing. Correlates with. If you look at this, if you look at how many movies Nicolas Cage, he was like in the movie where you steal the Declaration of Independence, if you don't know who that actor is, there's a correlation. It goes up and down with the same amount of regularity as people who drown by falling into a pool. There's correlation, but do you think Nicolas Cage movies cause people to die by drowning in pools? Yeah. I'm going to say probably not. Look at the second example. The divorce rate in Maine correlates with the per capita consumption of margarine. Margarine is like, I can't believe it's not butter. It's like country crock. What happens the more margarine you buy to your chance of getting divorced? You're on your way to divorce. Do you think that fake butter is causing divorce in Maine? No. There is correlation, but fake butter is not causing that. Example 3, Japanese passenger cars sold in the US correlates with suicides by crashing of motor vehicles. If you look at that, that's almost an exact correlation. But do you think people are committing suicide more because they bought a Japanese car sold in the United States? I'm going to say not possibly. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that the conclusion here is that correlation does not always mean you'll write down causation. It does not always mean causation. You have to have, in fact, it says, you need to back up your claim with what word if I'm accusing someone of something? Evidence or proof. So 4 minutes, let's get through this in 4 minutes. There's a picture. This is an illustration of a Hebrew translation of a book called Canon of Medicine. It's a Muslim book. And the translation was actually produced by a Jewish scholar at the court of a Christian king. The upper left-hand picture is a doctor examining a patient. The right picture is him telling the family. And the third picture on the bottom right is him writing a prescription. So it says on the handout, you should identify that this is a transfer of scientific knowledge across. Here's a question: how many cultures helped produce this book according to that little excerpt? How many different cultures helped make this book possible? Who is described in the little paragraph? Yeah, it was a Muslim book. It was translated by what type of person? A Jew. And it was paid for, the process was paid for by we'll write down scientific knowledge across 3 different cultures. 3 different cultures. Number 1, this product of 3 different cultures working together helps, number 1, the knowledge of medicine. They're spreading the knowledge of, number 1, medicine. And number 2, what is the networking of exchange? What is allowing Jews, Christians, and Muslims to work together? What's going to allow a book from the Middle East to get all the way to Europe? Something that we studied, something on the screen. What is the network of exchange? What is a term that we can use that's a network of exchange, connecting huge parts of the world together? A black, bold lettered word on the screen. Dar al-Islam. Network of exchange, we'll write down Dar al-Islam. That is what's connecting a Middle Eastern book with Europe. Dar al-Islam. Number 3, we also see the support of a Christian government. Because guess who paid the bill for the Jewish man to do it? Number 3, a Christian government. So we have Jews translating, Muslims writing it, Christians paying for it. 3 more lines, 2 minutes, we can do it. The spread of belief systems help facilitate, we'll write down, cross-cultural exchange. This is an example of cross-cultural exchange. Cross-cultural exchange. And these cross-cultural exchanges, they could be simple. In fact, it says interactions could include things like food. What's a drink Muslims gave white people? Coffee. They also gave white people sugar. That's a simple thing you can get. But last thing, they can also bring more complex things like, we'll write down, ideas and religion. Cross-cultural exchange. That's an implication of Dar al-Islam. It helps cross-cultural exchange. Quick comments and then you'll submit it. Go ahead. Which one? Nothing. It's 1, 2, and 3. So once you have that, submit it for a grade. Dar al-Islam helps spread technology and knowledge. It is no homework Tuesday. There is no homework today. Enjoy. Have a great day. We have no school next Monday. I look forward to seeing you all